Well, hello. Thank you for downloading, listening, and watching the Lean Into Artcast, a show where a couple of visual storytellers get together, challenge themselves with different visual storytelling topics, making things, managing things, the lifestyle that goes around pursuing making things. We think hard about this stuff, so you will too. My name is Jerzy Droz. I'm a cartoonist and teaching artist. The other host is...
Hi, I'm Rob Stenzinger. I'm a user experience and game designer. And yeah, how you doing, Jerzy?
I think I'm okay. This will be an experiment tonight. Anybody who's watching the video is probably wondering why, like, suddenly I'm wearing headphones. To be very brief, my iMac died, and so now I'm running the show. Usually when we do the show, this is like totally behind, inside baseball stuff. Maybe we can talk about this in more depth and extra lean later on tonight, Rob. But usually I'm running the switchboard, right, and the soundboard and everything. So having my iMac died means that I had to switch to my PC, which means I had to run a whole different setup, whole different workflow, and part of that workflow means I got to start wearing cans again. It's gonna get hot up here, Rob.
Got more thermal protection on your head than you're used to, eh?
A little bit, but
Right.
but I mean, I also say that at the top just because there may be a few hiccups as I test drive this new system, because we didn't get this happened like just like a day ago, so I haven't really had time to do a lot of ramping up and testing of this new setup. But I think it's going to be okay, don't you? Yeah, it'll be all right. We've been doing this how many years?
I think even if we have a glitch here and there, we'll be all right.
I think so too.
So yeah, it's all good.
So what do we talk about this week? What's our topic?
Well, it's something that like we've talked about upon occasion off mic, and I think each of us has had other inspirations and how this technique has come up for us, where it's thumbnailing stories with sticky notes. And yeah, hopefully we can talk about some examples and look at, like, well, why was this whole thing interesting in the first place, right? And
Let me preface that too with talking about. I think there's another episode that we did that's very related to this in terms of like thumbnailing with sticky notes as chunking your workflow, right? We did a whole episode 149, where we talked about like the different chunking out a project into like discrete stages where you have like a specific realm of concerns. And I don't think in that episode we talked about sticky notes as being part of that process. I don't remember for sure.
well,
But yeah,
I mean, I think in over 200 episodes, for sure, we've brought it up at some point, right? As either thinking about it, dabbling with it, tried it, and it,
Yeah.
it just the work it ekes its way into to things. In part because, I mean, that's as an office product, they're kind of an interesting little doodad. Different kinds of jobs you can do with them, right? Where you can probably, write too many passwords down and decorate your monitor with them. the classic office things. But, but in telling a story or trying to dig through something that get some ideas out of your head and then like play with them, it's an interesting object to do that with.
And also one more little piece of front loading. I want to give credit where credit's due. I did not use sticky notes for this purpose until relatively recently. And it was actually a former student of mine, who's now a grown-up making comics of her own, Lauren Hauser. And let's see, let me get her URL so I can credit it. And we'll put it in the show notes, lazuliart.tumblr.com. I actually made a comic with her called Minimum Wage Mages a couple years ago. She thumbnails all of her comics, and she has for years that way, where she puts all these sticky notes in her sketchbook and rearranges them as necessary. And I just thought it looked like such a fussy mess to do that. And I cocked my eyebrow at her for years. I'm like, why would you waste your time with all that? That seems like so much effort to create this fussy little grid of pictures when you could just like scribble it out in a sketchbook. Why go through all that trouble? Then I tried it and I was like, oh, I totally get it now. Yeah. So thank you, Lauren, for teaching me this and being patient with me as I looked quizzically at you, like a snooty grown up. But yeah, so how about we hit the music and head over to On the Ground and start talking about. We'll demo some of this using sticky note stuff. What do you say?
Yeah, sounds like fun. Let's do that.
All right, here we go. And pulling out an old classic to transition us over to On the Ground, where this is the part of the show where we actually demonstrate and look at what it looks like when we're practicing this specific thing. Who wants to go first?
Flip a coin.
Match it for it.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
Oh wait. Do we throw on 3 or do we throw on 4?
Oh,
is it 1, 2,
4? Sure. I assume 3. Anyway.
See, I always did too, but somebody got in my grill about that. They were like, "No, it's 1, 2, 3, throw." And I was like, "No, it's 1, 2, throw." Right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
oh, yeah,
all right. So, ready?
Yeah.
1, 2,
throw.
Whoops, I did it wrong. Let's try it one more time.
Dang
1, 2, throw.
Throw. All right.
What you got?
Sorry.
Oh, scissors. It's you. You're first.
Okay, sure, fair enough. Because you can always pick the meaning of the coin after the flip, and anyway. Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
So feel free to let's see, switch over here. I'll try to drag my mic, and what I have here is a set of thumbnails I worked on yesterday, and it's an 8-page short story with a couple of characters that are part of a thing called Two Pizza Team. And so I was in a situation where I'd outlined a few different options. This didn't come out of nowhere. It was sort of, I had a huge, almost too many ideas version of this story to tell. That was, at least 20 plus pages. And then I heard an episode of Tyler James' Comics Launch podcast. It was the one where he talked about dating your collaborators before marrying them. It was pretty straightforward metaphor and useful and fun. Tyler does awesome work, and it's really great to. I highly recommend just subscribe to his podcast. You won't regret it. Whether or not you're like, oh, I'm going to launch on Kickstarter, it's still too many great things in there that go far beyond the Kickstarter premise. And in one of he does sort of like a launching exercise near the end, and like it had to do with like what if you took that project of yours and broke it down in like the really smallest elements, and words that I've said to plenty of people, but like hearing someone else say it, I was like, you know what, I'm going to try again. So I did a fresh outline. I just literally did 8 lines on a different Post-it or sticky note, because 3M isn't sponsoring us. But let's see. I don't know if I'm getting that on camera.
Oh,
but,
here. Yep.
Yeah. So this is kind of like my story development board for this project. Sorry, I'm doing a terrible camera job.
So to describe it for people who are just listening to the audio, it's like one of those great big lap clipboards, like those 18, 20-something inch wide by 20-something inch tall clipboards covered in a grid of sticky notes. And these individual notes just have like sort of 1-sentence descriptions of what's happening. And
this one happens to have like 8 lines, where it's called the trash battle is the code name for this little mini story. And so here we are. The characters have to go through those stages that I listed, where they go out to, they're excited. They're pizzas that do martial arts, right? So they're in essentially like a food service level job. They go out back to horse around essentially, and that's how things start. Where setting the scene at the pizza restaurant, they start horsing around, and then things escalate as it becomes obvious that they actually have a job to do. And by the way, their job is problematic because the trash is sentient and disagrees with being thrown out. So, anyway, that's and then like you can see, like I was able to cover. This took me about an hour, and it's far less ambiguous to know like what I'm going to do next, right? Mm-hmm. And where I would love to get with this technique, this is like I was sold on this. In part, I think indirectly through Lauren, like you mentioned, Jerzy, because you were talking about this, and I thought, oh, interesting. But then at A2CAF in 2015, Kazu Kabuishi was talking about some of his storytelling techniques and for Amulet, and how he'll write scenes out, and the scenes become modular, and he'll move them around in a story. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
oh, I can't wait to do that, because I want to play with, not just like, you have an exercise for storytelling that's a lot like that, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. I do one in my classroom called Sequences and Consequences, and it's both like a moment choice exercise, but it's also about like rearranging story to see what kinds of new meaning bubbles up.
And like, so to me, like, I got benefit from mostly the low content volume to fill, and still immense growth in the information, like going from like literally like 8 phrases listed on one other sticky note that now blew up into 8 sticky notes, which each of them representing panels and moments that represent the, like, accomplishing that intention, that overall goal for each note. But I can't wait to, so it's almost like there's different granularities where I see benefit there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and I feel like we'll dig into that more
Yeah.
deeply in the 10,000 feet up section.
right on.
But what to go back to like the practical aspect of what we're looking at. So what you did is you start with a bunch of sticky notes with just a few phrases of actions written out in text, and
Yes.
from there you thumbnail out this little stick figure thumbnail of the page.
Yeah, so I just pulled off the original sticky note.
Okay, so that's one sticky note that has all 8 pages on it.
This is all 8 pages on one sticky note. That's what began the process. So it was like trash battle summary. Let's practice. Come on, do your job. Getting the trash is not easy. Battle. but is this right? Argue, fight, and resolve and reveal. It's pretty loose.
No, that's great. I mean, like you've got like one key action per page, right? Like this is the essential aboutness that you need to cover on each page, and so you chunk that out. All right, I did the figuring out that the practice happens on page 1 and battle happens on page 5, right?
Yep.
So now I figured that part out. So now it's like, okay, let's go to page 1. What does practice look like? How many panels is that going to take? What are those individual moments like? Am I going to be close to it? I'm going to be far away from it.
Well, and exactly. I want to establish context, right? So no, so I didn't explicitly say it, but page 1, I need to pull people in from like wherever they are in the world into this story's world. So yeah, there's an establishing shot of like a restaurant and essentially one of those like dumpster sheds, right, next to it. So
Yep.
And there's a door where that door has a little motion there, whatever, and they're coming out that door, and right here. But then this panel, you see them actually bursting out the door to start horsing around. Right.
This is you're using visual adjectives, and you're also establishing the scene, right? I've gotten really hung up on this notion of visual adjectives lately, and I've been using it a lot with my students because I find that a lot of beginning cartoonists, a lot of my young students at any rate, they get really they approach it from that Garfield comic strip, 2 characters standing in front of a wall kind of situation, and they don't deviate from that very much. At least some students do this. And so then I say to them, okay, well, this is great, but what are we trying to say in the scene, right? You've got that established. Practice. This is about practice. Well, what does practice look like? That's the next question. I would also like wonder if like putting next to practice, like what the tone, like a tone word, an emotion word. Is it joyous practice? Is it intense? Do you have that?
So
Is that what we're looking at?
now so my tone words, I didn't expound in the list of jobs for the pages, right? Because in a way that's what that list is. I decided to all the main accomplishment from this short story is hopefully people are curious and excited and having fun with these characters, right? You got one pizza who might have a different name, but let's just call that pizza Cheese. That Cheese is the essence of that character in this truth, this story I'm working out is a combination of Ernie, the Muppet, and Jean-Claude Van Damme, the martial artist, movie star.
Naturally.
And then Meat right? So you got cheese and meat. They're buddies. They're a duo, or to contentious friends, what have you. He's a combination of Bert and young Bruce Lee. Anyway, so you got Bert and Ernie, Van Damme, and young Bruce Lee. So, and then so like that accomplishes a little bit of quick touch point feeling for me to draw upon when I'm like thinking of these moments and like what's going to happen what's the energy between these two characters. Some emotional shorthand. And then Cheese moves without thought, and then can end up asking for approval later. Like really wants to be thought highly of by others. And then Meat is a bit uptight, but has this habit of, and this is something that it occurred to me, I thought is funny. And so now it becomes an experiment I want to try with this character. But he says 2 lines, and one, what he wanted to say, and the next one is what he thought you were going to say in response. As a habit, right? Just he's just that uptight. It's like, oh, I know you're just going to say that we should, let's say I don't even have it made up yet, but like that's the prompt for me to like figure out, but haven't done it yet. So
okay, so like you even have like a thumbnail of the characters themselves, like thumbnail both in terms of sketch, but the thumbnail in terms of like description of the character.
And actually, in truth, I have like dozens of pages of drawings of these two characters in exploring to try to find like what is their visual language between them. Like they're not going to both be round pizzas, right? They will be different shapes. Yeah.
Who's going to be the square pizza or what they've been calling the Detroit style pizza lately? And I'm like, really? Is that a Detroit style pizza? The big square deep dish?
Where'd this come from? I don't know.
Okay, but
well, honestly,
but
Detroit is a hotbed of creativity and innovation as well. So
absolutely, it is. Yeah. It has been for a while. But so even though you've got all this like pre-research and development done, you've got sort of this distillation. This thumbnail is a distillation of the character and giving, like you said, giving prompts to explore interactions between them. But can I back away and talk about the actual pages that we're looking at?
Yeah.
I'm noticing there's no text on these. So my question is, do you have the dialogue figured out at this stage, or are you sort of like having like a general fuzzy sense in your brain of what's essentially going to be said on these pages?
I have used the process in other work where I do the dialogue before I thumbnail. And in this case, I did not.
Oh, why not?
It could. I mean, literally, it's working with you for like 6 years.
Oh, really?
And hearing your process, yeah, and being like, yeah, I'm sold. Okay, I need to not just be. I don't want to just look fondly at that process. I want to use that process. So here, this is me giving it a shot.
Yeah, because I know at this stage of the game, like the dialogue is often, I've described it as like listening to a conversation through a door. It sounds very fuzzy, and I'll have a sense of rhythm, but I'll have a sense of tone and emotion, but I don't know the wording that they're using exactly. Right? I know this is an angry scene, or this is a happy scene, this is a contemplative scene, and so on. But I don't at the front end. I don't have the dialogue figured out, and when we get into my process, I'll share some of that.
Okay,
but
maybe this is the right time.
Is it?
Look at your process, yeah.
So I guess there's going to be some comparing and contrasting going on here, and I think there's going to be a lot of similarities. Let me turn on my screen. Oh, actually, I don't want to do screen sharing. Oh, yeah, I do. Because I want to start with my initial piece, like just like how you have those text sticky notes. I have I work up usually like a Google Doc with a page-by-page breakdown of 1 to 3 main actions on each page. So it's a little bit more detailed than what you were doing, like with having like the primary function of each page.
Mm-hmm. How many pages are you working on, out of curiosity?
Well, this was for Friendly Games. This was a 24-page story, and actually, the book I'm working on right now for Seriously, the new Captain Seriously book is 40 pages, and I did it exactly this way. I come up with like a 2 or 3 paragraph outline of essentially what happens, and then from there I chop up the text into what fits on what I think will fit on each page, right? So here's
Mm-hmm.
a friendly game, page 1. Splash of Boulder and Fleet arriving at the southern canals of the Lizard Kingdom. And then I put a couple little lines of, this is essentially what they're talking about. Hey, we arrived safely. Oh, was there danger? Page 2, Fleet points out the knockdown warning sign. The marshes around the canals are super dangerous. Boulder puts the sign back as Fleet hurries him on to her favorite cake place, Carl's Cool Cakes, right? Again, I try to stick to about 1 to 3 actions per page. I find that it's difficult to fit more than that. As a matter of fact, in the new Seriously book, there was one where I tried fitting 4, and I was like, no, it's squeezing it. So from there, then I go to, and let's see if I can get my iPhone camera working. Then I do what looks like this. There's page 1 of what I just described. And page 2. Let's see if I can get these both in the shot. Seeing both of these?
Have
Kind
you
of.
switched the camera?
What?
I think I can manually switch, but
Yeah, I did
get
pull
on
up
the-
my
okay.
iPhone camera.
okay.
So,
So, all right, I see. Yeah, I see a thumbnail and a half.
okay. See if I can pull this up a little bit closer. Like that. There we go.
Aha, yeah.
So in my case, it's pretty much the same, but I'm at this stage what I'm really worried about. And again, let's go back to that chunking. I'm not worried about drawing it well. I'm not worried about nailing the shot. I'm sort of getting like a very fuzzy, out of focus version of the shot. It's even kind of hard to tell. Like that's Fleet right there, right?
Oh yeah.
They're in some kind of wooded area, right? But it's not very well drawn. And I'll even put in like maybe like a hint at where I think the word balloons are going to fall and where the title's going to be placed. And I'll sometimes capture a little line of what I think might be the final dialogue, right? So here on page 2, see what we got here. Yeah. All kinds of monsters. Which is not what Fleet says in that panel, but it's like, okay, I just made a little note to myself that Fleet is lecturing Boulder on, there's all sorts of things that can get you here, right? Watch out. And then I think I put in a line of dialogue originally where Boulder was going to be like, well, let me put the sign back up. And then a good friend pointed out like, well, he's already putting the sign back up. Why even have that dialogue there? But, so that didn't actually make it into the final copy. But so again, this is about limiting my concerns in order to reduce the cognitive load, right? All I'm thinking about is what's the biggest panel? Is it going to be a faraway shot? Is it going to be a close-up shot? What's going to be the staging, right? Oh, well, when they see the warning sign on the ground, do we see it from their vantage point, or do we see that the warning sign is in the foreground and we see them looking at the warning sign, right? You know, do we need to, when we finally pull out of the page and Fleet's hurrying towards the town, putting the town off into the distance in the bottom right to lead us off into the page turn, those kinds of tricks. How many panels is it going to take, right? Well, we had like 3 discrete actions. They find a sign, Fleet warns Boulder about all the dangers in the marshes, and then Boulder returns the sign to its standing position while Fleet hurries him on. Okay, that's 3. I can figure that out from there. And sometimes even in my Google Doc, I'll like highlight sentences and say, that's panel 1, that's panel 2, that's panel 3 to help me reduce that load, right? But as I go through these thumbnails, you can see it's almost illegible. It's almost only I can tell what's actually happening there. And when I'm teaching my classes, I'm telling my students that as well. It's like, it doesn't matter if I can tell what's happening. If you can explain to me what that shot is, then we're good, right? Because I think my sticky note speed limit is about the same as yours, Rob. These take me around 5 to 10 minutes each, and I don't want to spend more than that on them because it's an efficiency thing, right? And then sometimes
And,
you know,
mean,
like
at the same time,
yeah.
it's like it has a different job. It's not about like really accurate depiction.
Mhm.
You're still working through some pretty significant questions at the I
You
mean,
bet.
you got a lot of priority of like, well, what moments are being emphasized? What's the flow of emphasis through this? What is? I mean, you mentioned transitions in and out of the page.
Mhm.
You even have rough balloon spotting. And
Yeah, well, this is what I was talking about earlier with like having a fuzzy sense of what the dialogue, what the conversation is,
mhm.
but not having a so like on page 3 in my Google Doc, the description is Boulder and Fleet stand outside Maggie's cafe, but this was the place. What happened to it? They go inside and are reunited with Maggie. Right? There's our two discrete things that happen. So when
Mhm.
I got to this scene, and I'll pull up. Here's the actual. Let's see if I can get that in the shot. This is the second round thumbnail. Whoop. Sorry, everybody. Here's the second round thumbnail here, right? And we can see that Boulder and Fleet are looking up at the sign before we see the cafe, right? Sign first, then we see the cafe. Why did I do that? Well, again, this is thinking about moment choice and panel layout first. Let's see, come on. My little tripod doesn't want to stand anymore. There we go. When they arrive at the cafe, how do I show that she's disappointed that it's the wrong place? And how do I show that it's not called Carl's Cool Cakes anymore? Right? Oh, well, let's close in on the sign and we'll say that we can see Maggie's Cafe. So they don't say, this place is now called Maggie's Cafe. It used to be Carl's Cool Cakes. No, now I can jump right into, you know, this was the place, wrong building, right building, but it was called Carl's Cool Cakes. Well, we can see that it's not called that anymore because this is Maggie's Cafe right there. That kind of stuff is what I'm thinking about, right? Like, what can I show instead of telling? And then while while I'm figuring that out, I'm also getting this, like I said, this out of focus, fuzzy, listening through the wall conversation of right? I don't know exactly what they're saying there, but I have a sense of what that rhythm is going to be. So.
Very interesting. And
That, I get a feeling that's something that I just picked up over the years of doing this. I don't think this is something I started doing when I was 19 years old or anything.
no, I mean, and it's I could see um so with just to compare and contrast, I was not having that as many um solutions that I was exploring through my thumbnailing, right? For me, it was like rough flow of moments and relationship between the characters, um actions. What would I be, what will they be doing that communicates the thing, the list of things I came up with. And then I knew fully well, like this list would probably change the whole let's practice up through resolve and reveal. um but in the effort of just in a draft, loose, put something down put something down on paper kind of way, um it's it it's a step toward possibly discovering, maybe trying to accomplish too many things on a page, and um like a step toward getting those moments with dialogue. Like, I would feel very comfortable taking this and then attempting to do some dialogue and then thumbnailing again
Mm-hmm.
to refine. But I wouldn't go straight from this to um, like penciling a page.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be able to work off of these to be able to get to final pencils. Um, if I may add one more thing,
Certainly.
something I also do is so I carry one of these pads of sticky notes with me everywhere I go. It's part of my travel kit, and I think we did an episode called Everyday Carry where I talked about that. And I think I even mentioned that I always carry these with me. Another thing that I do when I'm having like a long thumbnailing session, and maybe we can talk in the next section, Rob, about how what's the background noise situation when you're doing this kind of thumbnailing, because like I have this is one of the only parts of the process where I get like really fussy and I have to have everything just so in order to be able to do it well. Anyway, but when I sit down for a long session at my art desk, I also have another little smaller pad of thumb sticky notes, and this will be for if I do have like if a flash of inspiration hits and like nope, I know exactly what the conversation is going to be in this scene. Right, this is going to be, here's the 6 panels of the characters saying these very specific things related to the plot. I will sketch out each individual panel on one of these, and I will attach them to that particular thumbnail. So,
Wow.
It doesn't happen that often, but I keep this next to this just in case for that reason, because it does happen sometimes. So
Nice. I mean, it's a very modular, flexible option.
yeah.
That's really cool. I could see, I could totally see adopting that. I even looked at, I've got like some dot stickers and whatnot, and I thought, nah, for me, I'm dipping my toes in this technique for this story. So, not getting too fancy yet, but I can see. I mean, there's a lot of depth, a lot of threads to pull on, and honestly, I can't wait to use it for a longer story. So, where do you?
Yeah, actually, I used this. Ann and I both used this for the Rockets book that comes out next June, and yeah,
really?
it's like, so we actually have like a box of all of our notes, and like basically this big unruly pile of sticky notes of all the different iterations that the book took. But and Lord knows if I'll even be able to read them by the time we get around to like parsing through that box and like putting it together for like presentations and stuff. But yeah, so done it for really long projects, like 120-page projects. So
Love it.
anyway, do you want to like in a minute dig into some of the benefits of doing this and the why do it this way, and maybe thinking about like a little bit fleshing out this whole idea of like the benefits of chunking the process a little bit?
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Another interesting thing that we should dive into is that whole what does our environment look like you mentioned?
Yeah.
Like,
Thank you for hanging on to that one.
yeah, no problem.
All right.
But I
so
imagine we have something to do first.
yes, we do. We got to thank the people who make this show possible, and those people happen to be the folks who support us on Patreon. What is Patreon? Well, let me hit the Patreon music. There we go. Patreon is a way for you to give us a monthly upvote, a way for you to say like, hey, I believe in you. I believe in the work that you guys do. You provide value to me. Here is $1 a month, whatever you can afford. And we want to take this opportunity to thank 5 people who have been doing exactly that. And those people are, first, Olivia Birdton. Olivia Birdton can be found on Twitter at Olivia Birdton. Also, we want to say thanks to the Mysterious K. We don't know who you are, what your name is, or where we can contact you, but we thank you for believing in us and the work that we do. Also, Marshall Kocher. Marshall can be found on Twitter at Marshall Kocher. Marshall is also participating in the Art Sound Off Challenge this year. And so you can find his entries on Twitter at Marshall Kocher. Cameron Callahan, another comic book writer, cartoonist. Thank you, Cameron, for supporting us. You can find Cameron at Cam Callahan on Twitter. And finally, Angela Mitchell. Thank you, Angela. You can find Angela on Twitter at Angie Makes Stuff. And if you want to go to patreon.com/leanintoart, you can join them in supporting us, where we post all of the episodes that we do, as well as the extra leans, the shows that we record only for patrons. And we're doing one tonight. A new one will be posted within the next 24 hours, where it's just me and Rob riffing on a topic and usually landing on some kind of really interesting discussion or essay. And then it becomes an open mic post where you can follow up and take the discussion wherever you want in a safe place where only your fellow leaners hang out. So thank you to everybody who has been supporting us there. And we hope that you will consider doing so too at patreon.com/leanintoart.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right, how about some music to get us over to 10,000 feet up? Amended this transition music. It used to be very, very brief. Now it's a little bit longer because we got to hear the whole thing. Build our anticipation. We head over to 10,000, or no, yeah, this is 10,000 feet up where we talk about the topic in abstract a little bit.
Sorry, I'm just in a knowledge disco right now. Just...
Yep. That was such a good show.
It really was.
Really enjoyed it a lot. The Bloodhound Gang.
Yeah, I mean, and so I mean, they would do like scientific experiments with things lying around the house, kind of thing. Just bringing. I mean, I think their techniques are pretty common today. I don't think they were that common. Well, once upon a time.
No, I don't think they were. Those of you who are maybe a little bit younger than us, maybe what the old people call millennials, you can think of Zoom as being analogous to 321 Contact. But yes, 321 Contact was like late 70s, early 80s version of what became Zoom. Okay, well, Environment. What does it look like? What kind of environment do you need to operate in order to be doing this thumbnailing stuff, Rob?
I'm good with like bursts of focus time when I'm doing something short. And for now, that's it for now. As long as I'm not expecting to really think through many moments all at once, as long as I can sort of hold my breath, get one page done, and then be distracted, and then do another page. I think I could see benefit from like a full day of isolation or something, but I've so far found it, like for these, it was quite possible to do while hanging out with the family.
Oh, really?
Part of it. Well, yeah. Okay.
Wow, I'm impressed.
The kids were in bed. I mean, so fair enough.
Okay.
So it was just Kate, but so it was actually pretty easy to focus. But
I'm looking back through my ETP to see how long it takes me to do thumbnails and what time of day I was doing them. And yeah, I really need to be in like silence. Or if anything, like if anything's playing around me, it's got to be like really low ambient music. It can't be anything too exciting or to have lyrics in it or anything like that. I just get distracted way too easy. And I think it's because this part of the process, even though it's loose and it's fast and it's where the most interesting stuff in comics happens for me, like the sticky notes level, so this level and then this level. Can you even see that? Yeah. Like the second round
detail,
of thumbnails.
Yeah.
I just wanted so people get like a quick, thumbnail
yeah,
view.
So
of
your
the thumbnail.
detailed thumbnail view is roughly half the size of a letter page.
Yeah. So like this
roughly?
is like a letter size sheet of paper just folded in half and then collect it like that. And I have a file cabinet full of these. But
okay.
So this is the part of the process where I really feel like the real work of comics happens. Like I feel like I'm being a cartoonist at this part of the stage, but it's, for me at least, it's so intellectually grueling. It's so tough that my brain is screaming to do anything else. It's like, hey, you should look at the social media. And I'm like, but I don't even want to look at the social media. Like, yeah, you do. You really do. But I got all this stuff I got to do. No, you should eat again. I just ate, I'm looking for anything to stop me from doing this because I find it so challenging. So I have to be really, really strict about not having any distractions around me. Now, when I'm penciling and inking, I can have anything going on around me. I can work in like a crowded cafe. I can have screaming children around me. It doesn't matter. I can operate in that. I can have my attention pulled in those different directions and still work pretty well. But not when I'm thumbnailing. So.
And I could easily see being in that situation. I think for me, it's in part being new to this approach and doing my own experiment with it, and just having I have a loose curiosity to this whole little short story, where I think if this were like, well, okay, I'm working on the serious installment, that's the follow up to this other thing that I finished, then I could easily see being at a far higher level of alertness and concern and whatnot.
Is that how you interpreted that? That's very generous of you. I was trying to describe it as being such a aggrieved, unhappy teenager when I'm sitting down like, this sucks. I don't want to do this, man. But you turned it into me like operating at a high level. That's kind.
Well, it's like you're trying to paint the house but there's a bee on your forehead, right? You're like, don't sting me, dude.
Yeah. Somewhere in between those two is where it really is for me. But yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's again, it's where comics lives for me, and I love it a lot, but I hate being there, and it hasn't changed in 20 years. It's always been really, really tough for me. So, other questions, other thoughts about this? Why do this? For me, it's really useful. This part of the process feels like this is the squint. I'll just pull this back up on my other camera.
Okay.
This is the squint test for me, right? And we all have heard of the squint test when we were in art school, right?
Yeah. Where
Squinting at yeah,
you
go
get
ahead.
something down, and if you take this sort of uh, this blurred look at it, like what is the are the shapes of your intent being communicated?
Yeah.
And that's a big job. I mean, because you're going from so in your case you went from the void into something via some descriptive intentions, breaking down the page a little bit, rough dialogue, all that in your Google Doc, um, and then this is expounding upon that, turning it visual. I went from like far less, right? And so if you were doing like a really short story or something, I mean, could you ever see doing that, like going straight into the visual, or do you think it's really like this is like I can see huge benefit to your approach in the amount of accuracy based on your initial idea and expression of the story, right? Where
Mm.
it's going to come through. Where for me, I'm discovering still, and where you're kind of it seems like you're doing a little less discovery, more expounding and refinement.
That I guess that sounds fair. Yeah, the discovery is happening a lot more in the developing of the narrative part of it. Narrative in terms of what's the plot, what are the actions that happen. Um, Maybe fleshing out a little bit of that meaning while I'm doing that. But the sticky note thumbnails part is where I feel like again I'm doing the visual adjectives part where I'm saying like in the text it might be Boulder gets angry, right? Well, what kind of angry? Is it furious angry? Is it like a pensive anger? Is it a simmering anger? Well, that's the part where I get to that in the thumbnails. I explain that and explore that through the thumbnails, the sticky note thumbnails. The part where I say he got angry because this happened, that happens in the Google Doc. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Does that expand on what you were just describing?
Yeah, I think it. Really think it does. Um, and then does that stage have the same um, alertness, high concern for you as far as like, well, you need the same isolation and focus for the Google Doc step before the thumbnails, or are they kind
Mm.
of one and the same?
They're very similar. The difference being that Google Docs part looks like me sitting at computer typing, getting frustrated, going for a long walk, walking for around for an hour and a half to 2 hours, and really forcing myself to stay outside because like usually what happens is 5 minutes after I get outside, like the ideas start happening. I'm like, oh well, I can go back in and get back to work. Nope, nope, nope. Let that percolate. This reminds me of something I heard Stephen King say in an interview about writing. Someone asked if he had notebooks full of ideas, and he's like, no. It's like I let the idea sit in my head because if it's a good idea, it'll stick around. It's like if I captured everything, and this is just Stephen King, right? We listen to all these different authors to triangulate and find out where our maps lie. This is not to suddenly follow along with a guru, but I just thought it was an interesting point of view. Is he said like if I captured everything in notebooks, I just have notebooks full of garbage. But I know an idea is good when it won't let go of my brain, right?
Hmm.
And so I try that part for me is me trying to figure out what's sticky is going for a long walk. If I come back and the stuff still sticking there, then okay, then it goes into the Google Doc, right? That's what that looks like. But that's a very solitary thing. It's a thing where I can't have any other noise going on. It's a very if my brain could sweat, it does during that part.
That's pretty darn descriptive, and honestly, it's what you're describing. It is a more refined, layered set of skills you're applying at that stage. Where, for me, I think the word discovery sums up how this is a more playful, loose thing for me, and also like the ability to sort of chunk it up in like every like if I start one sticky note, I I try to do at least a couple, but I'm not, like each one is like this one more step, one more promise, like one more small manageable chunk of effort that I get to see accumulate. Where this set of 8 thumbnails I did do in one sitting, but the a prior let's see. I'm looking at this development board I held up earlier, and I mean, this came out of like I did 4 in one sitting, 2 in another, 2 in another. Yeah, so it was like 2 or 3, 4 different settings into to get roughly 12 pages.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it's that kind of small progress feels like that's a victory for me where I'm at, how I'm practicing this, right?
Oh,
Where,
so would
yeah.
would I be missing the mark by making the metaphor of like it sounds like you're having a conversation with the paper, you're letting the drawings sort of happen and letting that, like sometimes it is that way for me when I'm writing, and I think of again of like sketching as my first language at these days, and I feel like the act of putting those initial lines down begins the process of my brain decoding and untangling all of the different ideas that I have and start putting them into some kind of recognizable order.
Yes, I love how you put that, because essentially every intent for a page, because I haven't done the amount of development that you were describing ahead of time, it becomes this a tiny manageable exercise of like, oh no, I didn't realize how much I promised to do. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
To get this page communicated, I have to come in, come out, have these like why is this happening and where is it happening? And so
And that's another
like,
advantage
oh
to
gosh.
working that tiny is when you find those oh no's, you're really only abandoning a minuscule amount of effort, right? You haven't committed to a whole lot of stuff to only run up against that wall at the end and go like, oh crap, I put 25 panels in this page and I've drawn 24 of them, and now I realize that
Well,
this is all wrong.
and in some cases I'm open to the wrongness. Like that was the first 12
Yeah.
thumbnails basically I threw out to then draw the 8, right?
Yep.
And the but still with that process there's the oh no, it's almost like someone asking you to like, hey, can you come over and help me move a couch? That'd be so helpful. And it turns out you weren't listening and they really needed you to help them move.
Right.
And
Or in order to
that's
move
what
the
it's
couch,
like.
you have to help them move the bureau, the television,
Or that
the standing
exactly.
closet. Yeah.
There's so many interrelated concerns that
Yep.
I was honestly, in a way, it's like tricking myself into just go ahead, dude. It's no big deal. Go ahead. Oh, wait a minute, dang it! There's all these extra concerns, and then it's like I'm in the middle of it, and then it's only one thumbnail, and then I get to do it again.
Yeah, I do an exercise with my students where I actually take these scripts and I put them all out on a table, and I put the other thumbnails on the table, and I keep abandoned versions of pages of these sticky notes for the very reason of demonstrating to the kids, like, look, this page, there was 4 iterations before I even got to the second round of thumbnails because I wasn't sure how I wanted to approach it, right? There's still a level of discovery for me as well when I get to that page and it's like, okay, well, I had a picture in my head at the time when I wrote that line of dialogue, but that picture's not there anymore, and I got to refigure out how to show what past me had in mind. That kind of idea, and so, yeah, I honestly think about it as having a conversation with a piece of paper, and I try to think of it that way of somebody's got to break the ice, and I break the ice by throwing down those first couple lines, and once that happens, that starts to winnow away what all the different options are and starts giving me a direction with it. So Jimmy Parr's in the chat and says, yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to work on the story when I want to do something else. Going back to my earlier thing about how like my brain is screaming for distractions. That's how I get past those distractions, right? Is by like throwing down those first couple lines. And even if I'm only, like you were saying, Rob, like getting like 2 pages, 2 sticky notes thumbnailed out or 4. Here's another thing. This is a wonderful way to trick yourself into keeping going is when you have some kind of visual feedback on the effort that you've put in, right?
Yeah, it's finishing feels good, and it's not the whole big thing that you had imagined in your head as like, oh, it'll be this book and it's going to be wonderful. um but incremental progress is fantastic, and that's one of the things that it's hard to beat physical media, for its tangibility,
Yeah, it really
which
it
is
really is.
pretty darn obvious, but you know what?
Is it though? Is it? I mean, that's one of those things that I feel like I only get reminded of when I see some of my fellow cartoonist friends posting pictures of when they finish a book and they show that stack of Bristol. Like, here's
Yeah.
the last year of my life, this big stack of Bristol. I'm like, oh, that's right. I get really excited about Clip Studio Paint and all the affordances that it has until I see that. And I'm like, I don't have that. I've got a screenshot of a folder full of the file names, but I don't have that. Like, there's a weight, right? Like, until you hold it, until you like see it, that kind of thing. I don't know if it's all that obvious. Easy to get distracted by
Well,
other.
it sure helps. It's trade-offs in either medium. But little sticky notes aren't going to, probably cause a shoulder and back stress carrying them around, uh, versus big notebooks and stuff. So, what about other things related to the modularity and stuff? How much do you take advantage of that?
Not a ton, but on Rockets we did. Rockets was
Okay.
a book that had a lot of modularity built into the story, in that we were jumping around history a lot. We didn't tell it in chronological history, right? We told it in terms of like areas of concern, like, oh, here's Rockets in entertainment, here's Rockets in warfare, here's Rockets in exploration. So we can zigzag all over the place in terms of history. Um, and so for that, it was like, oh, well, this whole 8-page sequence can now go over here. This 3-page sequence can go over there, and that's another big advantage of using the sticky notes thing. And this was the first. And again, Lauren Hauser told me this. I didn't listen, and then I came across a blog post on drawing words, writing pictures, Jessica Abel and Matt Madden's blog, where they were talking about how they teach their students to thumbnail on index cards for that reason. I was like, oh, of course, that's brilliant, because then, yeah, it's just like a storyboarding sequence in an animated film or in a motion picture. You can move things around as needed, and it can alter the meaning of the story if you do that sometimes, or it can just be more efficient, or it can be more clear, right? Have you taken advantage of that, Rob?
I have not, but like I'm intuitively completely sold and excited to do that, because for it helps you mess with large moments as, let's see, if you just told a story totally linearly, and you're really overemphasizing or totally emphasizing that, maybe there's plenty of impact, but there can be a benefit from slicing in, um, like different characters situations, or layering in, providing a different emotion to take a break from that other scene's emotion, or what have you. And I don't think I'm going to benefit from that in an 8-page short story, but you know, 20 on up, maybe, especially once you get, I would say, I don't know, 48 pages or so, you're going to have
Well, and
like
especially,
multiple scenes there, and it may have more surprise by switching it up.
and even very practical things like spreads, like when 2 pages are together in your book,
Yeah.
and if you have information interacting between these 2 pages and you start moving things around, all of a sudden, right? Now
Yeah.
this is so being able to lay them all out so you can see how all the spreads are interacting. And I know there's at least one page in Rockets where we had to be very careful about this, because we have it set up so that you can do a page flip and only like a little bit of information changes between those 2 pages, but it's like very crucial to understand a bigger concept. We like worked in a page flip to like sort of build a larger point. And then all of a sudden, then when we went back to the book, and Anne was like, there's like a whole page here that really is redundant. We don't need this. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. So we took that page out. Then everything cascaded back one page, which now meant that our page flip thing didn't work anymore. So now we have to like rearrange things in order to make this. So when you're talking about big projects, that can definitely happen. That's another nice thing about laying them all out is you can actually see like what the, if you've ever used a pagination software like InDesign or something, you've looked at things in spread view, right?
Yeah, that's another interesting point. It's essentially a place to pre-test, pre-visualize, without having to, discover that way later in the process. I mean, so isn't that a lot of the core benefit of doing this is to try to solve small problems incrementally and not have too much investment in a direction that you find out isn't going to work?
Yeah, for me that is, yes. And again, going back, there's like this focusing on essentials that I really like. This particular part of the process isn't about me showing off what a great illustrator I am. As a matter of fact, great illustration is only going to distract from the core function of this part of the process, right? This is about me understanding what is absolutely essential in order to communicate the meaning of the page, because my personal point of view is that a cartoonist's chief job is clarity.
I love it. And I don't know, like, what do you think do we have like maybe a final thought on this that we should delve into?
Possibly.
A couple more things
Possibly.
to expound? Or
I think yeah, go ahead.
Is there a counter argument to this to say that, I mean, couldn't...
Yes, I have one. I have a counter argument. And right, let's save that for the final thought. I've got one monstrous torpedo that I'm going to shoot into the side of this whole episode to close out with.
Perfect. All right. You're lucky I like learning. All right. I'm invested in these ideas, darn it. All right.
Me too. I got to load up. This will be fun. I'm actually, with my new setup, we can actually hear the sounds that I'm playing on my computer. So when we talk about This Panda in a second, we're actually going to hear the music from This Panda Needs You, which is to say, in about a minute and a half, we're going to wrap up this episode with that salvo, that torpedo that's going to take down the boat of our whole episode. But before we do that, we got to thank some other people who make this show possible, and those people happen to be us. I describe myself as a cartoonist and teaching artist, and I make comic books. And the comic that I hope you will check out today is called Boulder and Fleet: Adventures for Hire. That's what I was showing you earlier, thumbnails from that. One piece of news. Oh, I should describe the comic. About two best friends. They're adventurers for hire, which means they're trying to make a living being adventurers. The bird is like a very ambitious gal who wants to be the richest, most successful adventurer of all time, but she has hitched her wagon to a pacifist bear who likes to help people, but he likes to do it in very peaceful ways, which makes solving adventure problems kind of complicated. And you can read it at boulderandfleet.com. I just released... for public purchasing, a friendly game mini comic at tinyastronaut.com. It's also available in the sidebar of boulderandfleet.com. And this is a 24-page story with a letterpress cover. And I think the cover turned out pretty nice. Rob, I think I just sent you some of those, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I have it on the shelf over there. I can grab it. It's, that's okay. It's mini comics are such that that surprise. First of all, it's a whole 24-page story. I mean, this is going to pull you in. It's serialized online, but here you can have a chance to like hold it and feel the craft that Jerzy puts into his work. And that
it's letterpress, so like
else.
there's like a tactile thing to it. Like you can actually feel like the impression of the logo, and on the back cover where I did like the copyright information. Also in that store is the Boulder and Fleet Inktober 2015 sketchbook, which a couple years ago when I participated in Inktober, I did a whole series of drawings of the characters from my comic interacting with cool vehicles and accessories in this like sort of toyetic exploration of the world of Boulder and Fleet. That's available there as well. Now, Rob, you make a game. I'm going to try to pull up the game. I'm going to
super fun.
turn, and you can talk through it. Let's see if I can turn the music down a little bit.
It sounds great, and it definitely can hear it pretty boldly. But all right, This Panda Needs You. That's the game we're talking about, and it's a game that you have these shape stacking puzzles. They're shapes, but they're also physics based. So you have the satisfaction of like picking them up and putting them on one another, and different shapes, causing different things. I mean, you can't stack a square and a triangle and all that, but yet, they're put in these different configurations. A panda shows up and sees a nice little scene. Everything's fine until a cloud comes along and knocks them down. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you totally see that happening. But it's all good. You're there to help the panda put things back the way they should be. And there's like over 50 levels. They start out really super easy, teaching you the basics and approachable, and then get a little more challenging as you have to deal with, like, gosh, there's more blocks, more complex, arrangements and whatnot. So, but all along the way, got a happy panda dancing, encouraging you along, and that celebratory music. And you can learn more about it at this-panda.com, and it's available for iPhone, iPad, Android phones and tablets, and also Mac OS and Windows. Mac OS and Windows, go to itch.io and search for This Panda. And then the others are, of course, in your familiar places, the Google Play Store and iTunes App Store.
And if you are more interested in the stuff that we think about rather than the stuff that we make, leanintoart.com/workshops is where you can find a whole bunch of videos that you can download at a price of your choosing. They're like full workshop videos. It's not like an actual episode. It's more like visiting our classrooms and learning from us. leanintoart.com/workshops. If you're watching this on YouTube, giving the video a thumbs up helps more people find the show. And if you're listening to this via podcatcher like iTunes or whatever, giving us a 5-star review in whatever podcatcher you use also helps more people find the show. And we thank everybody who has been doing just that. Thanks so much. It means a lot to us.
It really does. Thank you.
All right. Time for final thought.
All right. You've got a bold thing to
That's right.
You made a claim that this whole episode is baloney or something like that.
No, I just have a counter argument as to like why you might not want to subscribe to what we were talking about.
Counter away.
So I know I have noticed this about my work, and I mean, even my friends and my wife have noticed this about my work, that when I do this part of the process and I'm sketching things out and I'm being really loose and having fun with it, there's a life and liveliness to the drawing that doesn't survive to the final illustration. And I forget who said it. I've heard this from a bunch of different cartoonists. I don't know where it originates, but every step diminishes the energy of the drawing by 10%. So, yes, chunk your workflow, chunk it like crazy. But in the end, you're going to have a less lively, somewhat deadened piece of art. And like I said, with some of my pieces, I've seen that happen.
No, I mean, I agree with that too. It's like when I was working on Art Geek Zoo, that comic at artgeekzoo.com. And there's... I went through a lot of different processes and workflows, but one of them where I would do like a rough sketch on paper and then collage it into Photoshop and then export that and then do pencils again, like to refine. Something just was not as energetic, right? Energetic, like if you look at, and I don't know if you mean in this way, where like in animation, like the relationships of like hips to shoulders and spine fluid, like expressiveness and even like it's elasticity and the exaggerating of anatomy or like, people foreshortening and gestures and who knows, right?
Yeah.
That's just like flowing in
and maybe I remember talking about this in the Art and Story days. Like you, maybe it wouldn't even be 100% anatomically correct at the thumbnail level, but it just looks more alive at that level, right? There's like an energy and a liveliness to the lines and to the illustration, to the pose, to the composition, that as you refine it, it becomes a little bit more brittle looking. So I think that is an argument against the chunking. Like I can see, and I can't imagine doing it myself. Maybe someday I will, but like diving in and going straight to the page kind of thing, like Jack Kirby was reported to do. You know, he started in the upper left-hand corner and just started drawing like a fax machine, okay. And the drawing just like emerged. Maybe.
I feel like there still must have been some stages in his brain that happened, and you know,
there was an entire lifetime of drawing comics that made those stages in his brain a fluent transition, right?
Absolutely. And this is all like, so I would guess, I mean, just thinking about your argument, and my counter to your counter would be, I've got two counters. Let's say in worst case, you're talking about 10% over time, not dividing your project up in tenths and having to trade away one for every stage, right? So then you have 10 stages max, and their project is total gibberish, right? It's only 10% of what's left. So that might be worth it to accomplish your, like something you proclaimed that like a cartoonist's main job is to provide clarity. So perhaps that's a fair trade. That's my one argument. The other one is that I think you pointed out something that's valid, that just becomes a creative constraint. So being aware of it, might we try to find to detect it, where it becomes almost this rule of thumb as we proceed in our projects. We get to the next stage and we're like, well, have I lost something here? And you can wrestle with that, deal with it, chew on it, get feedback. What do you think?
I think that we together we have presented an arena in which people can think about all of these topics, all these concerns, all these constraints, and hopefully arrive at their own conclusion as to what works best for them. But at the very least, I think that like if there were a takeaway I would hope anybody would get is that like breaking things into these smaller nuggets of concern makes it, for at least for me, more intellectually manageable, and it creates very clear check-in points, like you were describing, of okay, finish, evaluate, iterate, finish, evaluate, right?
And yeah, and for me, that's like my tow rope back up the hill or whatever. If so I can keep skiing through a story or something. I don't know, metaphors, but it helps me just proceed without the overwhelming bigger promise. I can do a small one and keep at it.
That's nicely put. Okay, well, I think we did a show.
Yeah, I think so.
One more reminder to everybody: Inktober is happening right now. Or Inktober? There's my brain. Art Sound Off is happening right now. Artsoundoff.com. And that's a challenge where Rob and I challenge ourselves, and by extension everybody else, to check in once a day for the month of October or November with an audio journal, audio accompaniment to the work that you're creating. But Rob monkeyed with the parameters this year. He pulled some levers in the back room, and now there's different levels of challenge, and you can do it just once. You can say, like, I'm checking in one day this month. That's all I got. You could dip your toe in, see how it feels. If you want to come back again, you can. If not, you still met the challenge. You are part of Art Sound Off with that one check-in. Or you can do like a week's worth, or you can do a month of interviewing buddies. There's a lot of different ways to do it now, and all the details are at artsoundoff.com. It's been fun listening to the first group of entries. Troy, Shadow Inktronics, is in the chat room. he's been playing along with, like I said, Marshall and some other cool folks and Rob and I are doing it again too.
Yeah.
So a lot of fun.
It
Okay.
is, and the idea is this is about being inclusive. Like even if you, let's see. So I guess we have two different theses that are woven into this. Jerzy has, I think. Let's see if I represent this well. The angle on you can accompany your art with your voice, and that's not always something that you get to do, and it's a huge benefit and add-on to your community you're trying to connect with. And for me, I'm more emphasizing just the practice of the reflection, and I find that I've gained a lot out of it listening to others and me practicing this and whatnot. So I in essentially waving a giant flag by helping by working with Jerzy on this to say, give this a try. You might benefit too. And then you don't even have to share it publicly. That's the other dun dun dun. It's like, there you go. Just try it. That's it's about the best endorsement I can give it, because it's not like, oh, it's this secret, Google content. We're creating some searchable findability because we're doing a hashtag. Yeah, there's that, because it's just really useful to rally around for everybody to take part, right? But it's about making it what you want to make of it. And if you feel like it, join us.
Love it. All right. So we'll be back next week. We do the show every week, Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central. And we stream live on YouTube, and then we collect the show the next day at patreon.com/leanintoart. And thanks, everybody, for who was hanging out in the chat tonight. People were downloading, listening, and watching. Until next time, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy Drozd on Instagram.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Instagram.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
All right. I'm going to turn off the stream. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much.